If you're looking for information on business, fashion, or fashion design, you want to make sure you're listening to someone who has experience in those fields. I'm here to tell you, you've come to the right channel. I used to be right where you are. I'm a small town girl from Minnesota, and I made it to the #1 most recognized name in prom dress designers. Hello, I'm DeBora Rachelle. My dresses have been featured in every teen magazine like 17, Cosmo Girl, Cosmopolitan, and many, many more. They've been on celebrities, in the movies, on Broadway, walking down the red carpet. I've licensed my products. I hold several patents. And I used to own a chain of retail stores. I was even the first dress store ever on the internet. I was designing, manufacturing, wholesaling, and retailing my dresses all over the world under my trademarked brand name of DeBora Rachelle. I had 5 factories in China and was importing dresses into the United States and exporting them all over the world. Then, out of the blue, I received an offer on my company, and I took it, and I retired at the age of 42. But the point here is that at one time, I was where you are at now, and I can teach you how to get where I ended up. You've come to the right channel if you're looking for information on business, fashion, or fashion design. I've been there and I've done that. So make sure if you're listening to anyone else that they have the same qualifications, because you don't want to be led down the wrong path. Believe me, it can be financially, emotionally, and downright draining to be led in the wrong direction. A lot of people think those who have succeeded don't want others to succeed, but from my point of view, it's just the opposite. I want everybody to succeed in doing what they love to do. What a perfect world this would be, everybody just doing what they love. So sit back, relax, and let's talk a little bit about business, and maybe throw in some fashion. So welcome to my very first podcast ever. I always get asked questions about business and fashion. So I thought, why not take it live and just answer people's questions out loud? It seems like a lot of times people are asking the same questions over and over. So I'm just going to put it all out there and tell you my successes and my failures and what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And hopefully you'll take away a few ideas to inspire you or trigger your creativity to take the plunge into business or boost your current business. I always say if you can get just one idea from a seminar or workshop, it was worth attending. So hopefully, with each podcast, you'll get at least one idea that you can take back to your business and use. So here we go. So a few questions I get asked over and over again are, how do I figure out what type of business I should open? Or I want to go into fashion. What are my options? And finally, how can I get a great business idea that I know will succeed? My answer to all 3 of these questions is the same, and it will never change. First and foremost, you have to figure out what you love to do. Because the great news is if you're working at what you love to do, you'll never have to work a day in your life. Your work becomes your playground, your vacation. It's almost like your work defines who you are and what you stand for. And second, when you do find something you love to do, chances are you'll get pretty good at it, and people will naturally take notice. So by naturally, I mean they start to seek you out for your advice on this topic or whatever place of business you're at, and somehow people like the press manage to find you. And all this happens because you found something that you love to do. So ask yourself, what are you passionate about? I was lucky. I knew I wanted to open up a chain of stores. And that chain of stores led me to determine in order to be more profitable, I needed to cut my margins, which led me to designing my own line of dresses. You see, once I had 3 stores, this made it possible to reach the high minimums needed to buy in bulk for manufacturing my own line of dresses. Becoming a fashion designer and designing my own line of dresses was my dream, and one that I never thought possible for a small town girl from Minnesota, so I never gave it a second thought. However, opening up my own chain of stores seemed doable, and so my plan was just to open up 1 store at a time, and if it was successful, then use that money to put into the next store, and use that money to put into the next one until I had developed this chain of stores. You see, I truly believe that if you follow your heart and do what you love to do, doors will open for you that wouldn't have opened for anyone else. And when you're thriving, doing what you love to do, people take notice and you get to reap the rewards. For me, it was reaping what I sowed, literally. Instead of buying a dress at wholesale and keystoning the dress, keystoning, by the way, is doubling the price, and that's a typical markup in retail. Instead of buying at wholesale and keystoning the dress, if I manufactured the dress myself, I could add another 25% to my margins. It was a win-win. I already knew how to sew. I don't ever remember not knowing how to sew. I just knew sewing, and fashion was my passion. By manufacturing my own line of dresses, it woke up the press, who started to call me for my expert opinion on fashion. It was just a natural progression of doing what I love to do, and it never felt like work. Here's the thing. If you're doing what you love to do, people automatically start to pay attention. I didn't have to work to receive the attention. It was just a natural progression, and it happened automatically. And when you love what you do, you also learn how to figure things out along the way. By owning a store, I was working face-to-face with my customers, so I knew what they wanted. I asked them questions when I was in doubt. It still frustrates me when I see designers only design clothing that they like without keeping their target market in mind. Then they wonder why their dresses are not selling. The term target market refers to the people you plan to sell your product to. For my prom dresses, my target market was girls ages 14 to 18, and for my evening gowns, my target market was a little bit older, women and celebrities ages 18 to 45. I knew who my target market was, and I knew their likes and their dislikes in fashion because I was communicating with them on a daily basis, and my dresses sold. You see, some designers don't realize that they need to specify their target market, then satisfy their target market's wants and needs, not their own. Even when I outgrew working directly with my customers in my retail stores, I contacted them direct with the use of surveys in our email list. That is what helped me to succeed. That's not to say I never designed anything I just had the urge to design. There were very few dresses that I ever made that I didn't like. Every season I would design something that stuck out, something unusual that I just wanted to or had the urge to design. I would do that just to have an image enhancer. Image enhancers actually attract the press and your customers because they're not your typical dress or your typical product. Customers typically don't buy these image enhancers, but they capture their attention to see your other gowns. So image enhancers actually make you money because they attract the eyes of the press and your customers. So their uniqueness is what gets them into the magazines and gets your customers to think, say, who designed this crazy dress? I have to look them up. I put a photo of one of my image enhancers on my website next to this podcast. It was a black and white dress with feathers on the skirt, and it poofed out, almost like a ball gown, but it wasn't quite floor length. This dress was actually picked up by 4 magazines because it was so different from everyone else. It ended up being in a feature editorial in 17 magazine, and it was worn by Ashley Tisdale in Cosmo Girl magazine, and an editor even asked me to wear it in a business magazine where they did a feature on my life in the fashion industry, and it was also seen on Cheyenne Kimball, who had her own show at the time, and that was shown in Prom magazine. So it received a ton of mileage. Think about it. At the time, a 1-page full-color advertisement in 17 magazine cost about $72,000 back then. So when the press decides they're going to put your dress or your product in their feature article, you don't have to pay them for that. Feature articles are free. So for a designer, it's like saving $72,000 for an ad in a 17 magazine. That's huge. That's money you could be putting towards buying more inventory. So the problem some designers have is when they only make designs that are like image enhancers, really out there, but not necessarily what their customers will be wearing or buying for that matter. Making too many image enhancers can pretty much lead to their demise. As such was the fate of famous designer Poirere. I talk about designers a lot when it comes to business because I feel that there's really a lot we can learn from past designers. So looking at Poirere opened his fashion house in 1903 at the age of 24. That was about the same age I was when I opened my first store. His claim to fame was liberating women by first getting rid of all the petticoats, then ridding women of their corsets. You know, those bustiers that are tied up tight to cinch in the waist and raise the bust? Yeah, he got rid of them for us. You can thank him for that. He replaced these with looser fabric on the top, similar to the lines of a Japanese kimono. The guy was a genius. He was the first designer to ever have his own fragrance. He also opened up his own interior design house. He photographed his designs like they were works of art, not just those that went into a garment index. Poirere was a brand expert. So after he became a well-known, recognized name for freeing women from their corset, he was then recruited to serve in the war. And once the war ended, he didn't realize just how liberated women really became. And he didn't change his design style to fit their wants and needs. He tried so hard to try to get them back to buying his products that he drove up lavish bills trying to get his customers to take notice, but he ended up driving himself into debt. His wife even left him and he died destitute, all because he designed what he wanted to design, and he didn't see that the world had changed and his customers' styles and needs had changed. So you have to pay attention to your customer. Listen to what they have to say. Take surveys. Get in touch with them on social media. Use newsletters, create a blog, or simply just go pick up the phone. It's important. You have to keep in touch with your customers' needs and wants. And when you do, you'll find out that they'll remain loyal to you and they'll keep giving you their business. So now I'm getting a little off track from the question of how do you know which business you should go into? The answer is simply figure out what you love to do. And by doing so, you will never actually have to work a day in your life. My work was my vacation. And when I actually took a vacation, all I really wanted to do was get back to work. So what if you still can't figure out what you love to do? Start with your hobbies. Do you like to fiddle with rocks and stones? I know one girl who loved to collect rocks. And since she had so many rocks lying around, she started making them into jewelry, which led to her opening up her own jewelry line. And they were gorgeous. My Uncle Penty, he used to like to just sit and whittle. He started to whittle spoons, and then people started to ask him, hey, can I purchase one of those spoons? And that became his business. And his wife, Hannah, well, she loved to weave rugs, so she ended up in a rug business. If you don't currently have a hobby, think about what you like to do. Do you love talking? Believe it or not, this is a talent. My son would never be caught dead up on stage talking to an audience. I, on the other hand, put a microphone in my hand and I'm all over it. That's probably one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast. I actually always thought everyone loved to be up on stage until I had a son and found out that not everyone likes to do what I like to do. So if you like being up on stage, what about being a speaker or an actor or a sales representative? Maybe you love a good party. What about being an event planner? Do you love to travel? You could always be a travel planner or a travel writer. Perhaps you love to cook. What about a career as a caterer, a chef, or a food truck operator? There are so many possibilities out there. You just have to find out what you love to do. If fashion is your passion, like it is for me, there are many roads you can follow. As a business owner in fashion, I pretty much held just about every position you can think of in the field of fashion. Business owners wear many hats. So if you want to start your own business, just know you'll have to spread yourself thin between various fields that go into making a business. I had to know my accounting so I could read the bottom line. I was a salesperson so I could teach my staff how to sell my goods. Obviously a fashion and product designer. I was a real estate developer and a retail store layout designer. You name it, I did it. So let's just take a look at what various positions are available in fashion. Because I want you to see that within a certain field, there are many more positions available than just what meets the eye. So if you like a certain field, but you don't necessarily like a certain position within that field, keep looking because there are plenty of other jobs out there within that same field. For instance, within the field of fashion alone, you have fashion models, you have boutique owners, chain store owners, sales consultants, trend forecasters, stylists, digital media fashion specialists, data analysts, product developers, fashion writers, style show coordinators, fashion photographers, CAD designers, technical designers, print designers, fabric researchers, sustainability officers, authenticity experts, fashion psychologists, merchandise planners, creative directors, fashion public relations coordinators, retail buyers, fashion designers, pattern makers, graphic designers, art directors, market researchers, window display visual merchandisers, sourcing specialists, costume designers. Geez, I could go on forever. That may take up the rest of this podcast. So let me just say, if you don't like a certain position, but you like the field that it's in, like fashion, there are so many more opportunities. So just keep looking. If I just mentioned a fashion career that you kind of liked and would like to look more into what it entails, I'll put a link on my website that will tell you more about it. So just go to businessfashiontips.com for more information on these various fields of fashion. So start with what you love and then decide where you want to take your passion. That's the best way to make sure you'll be successful. And sometimes you won't get it right the first time. You may try something and figure out, this really isn't me. And at that time, it's time to move on. After I sold my company in the fashion industry, once my non-compete clause was over, I thought I would be jumping right back into fashion. But then I thought, maybe I should try something new. I was having trouble getting my bed sheets to stay on my bed, and I thought, aha, I'm a designer. I can make bed sheets that actually stay on your bed. So I did, and I even got a patent for them. And then I started researching fabrics, and oh my gosh, if you knew what you were sleeping in, you would literally have nightmares. Most bed sheets contain toxins. If they say things like non-iron, permanent press, non-wrinkle, that's formaldehyde that's in your bed sheets. And that's a cancer-causing carcinogen. So I decided to only make bed sheets that contain no harmful chemicals that can harm a person. And then I found a place in Xinjiang, which is next to Tibet, that hand-picks cotton. So when you hand-pick cotton, you end up with extra long fibers. So when you end up with bed sheets that have extra long fibers in them, there's less connections in the fibers, which means there's less pilling. And also with extra long staple cotton, the fabric breathes, keeping you cool when you need it and warm when you don't. So there you have it. I now have bed sheets that contain no toxins that 75% of other manufacturers have in them. And they actually stay on your bed. And they're one of the most luxurious fabrics in cotton, 100% cotton that I can think of. And if you'd like a set, feel free to check out my website at DeBoraRachelle.com and use the coupon code BFT15 and I'll give you 15% off your first order just for listening. That's coupon code BFT for Business Fashion Tips and the number 15, BFT15. I also designed a patented duvet cover, which I call Zip Zip Flip, which I'm sure I'll be talking about in future podcasts. So with these bed sheets, I learned a lot in the process and I really had fun doing it. But believe me, once I designed a set, I wasn't totally in love with the idea of staying with bed sheets all my life. After all, it is just a square piece of fabric. And I miss the draping, the design, and the creativity that goes into making evening gowns. So I pursued licensing them to another company that does have a passion for bed sheets. It's a win-win for both of us. So you have to love what you do. You have to have a passion for it in order to be successful in it. Then you have to have the confidence in yourself to go after it. If you don't believe in yourself and you don't just go for it, it'll never happen. And no one else can do this for you. You have to do it yourself. And there'll always be naysayers. If I would have listened to what other people have said, I wouldn't be where I am today. Granted, some people do offer sound advice, but just know everyone is different. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. If a person has a passion for what they're doing, that eliminates half the battle of being able to succeed in what they're doing. There are plenty of times I didn't listen to my own intuitions, and I could just kick myself for all the opportunities I lost out on. I'll never forget the first time I decided to invest in stock. I went into a stockbroker thinking, oh, he knows what he's doing. However, when I got there, he talked me out of investing in the eBay stock I wanted to invest in. I figured he was the expert, and so I purchased the Dell stock he was so adamant about. Well, Dell, that company tanked and fell apart. The original owner finally came back and took back the company and bought the stock that I had invested in at pennies on the dollar. Meanwhile, the eBay stock, which was the one I went in to invest with my own intuition, that doubled, then it tripled, then it split, and it was one of the highest performing stocks that year. Do I regret investing with that stockbroker? No, not really. It taught me a very valuable lesson. To go with my own gut. Believe in myself. Because when you don't, very rarely does it end up good. And this set me up for my next win. Right after that, I wanted to invest in some residential land that I thought one day would go commercial. My husband was very adamant that I don't do that. I did it anyway. That's another nice thing about having your own company. You have your own money to spend the way you want to spend it. So I had my company buy the real estate. And my husband kept saying, if you make anything on that house, I'll kiss your butt in public. I put renters in that house and I never spent one penny, as the tenants paid for the mortgage payments and anything that went wrong with the house, such as changing out the water heater. It did eventually go commercial, and I decided to put it on the market, and I got back 4 times what I paid for it. And on top of that, it only took 1 day to sell. However, my husband still owes me that kiss. I'm going to have to get that from him one of these days. It's definitely not the biggest transaction that I've ever done, but it's the one that gave me the most glory because it was the one that others said I would not be successful in. You are what you believe you are. If you believe in yourself and you see yourself in a positive light, others will see that emotion come through and see you in a positive light also. If, on the other hand, you're constantly cutting yourself down, others will see that and think that of you as well. If you hate yourself, they'll think you must not be worthy, and chances are they'll treat you like you treat yourself. And even better, if you're positive about yourself and what's going on around you, you begin to see your surroundings as a better place and in a different light, and everything starts to rub off. An ancient Chinese philosopher and writer named Lao Tzu once said, "Change your thoughts, change your life." And I'm a firm believer in this. If you can change your thoughts, even if it's about yourself, your life can take on a whole new direction. Change your thoughts, change your life. And I'll be right here every week trying to help you achieve your dream. I want you to be successful in what you do, because if we all get to lead the lives we want to live, enjoying our work like it's a vacation, imagine what a wonderful world this would be. Everyone happy, everyone loving life, everyone doing exactly what they love to do. I cannot think of anything better. Can you? So get out there and make your dreams happen by doing what you love. And I'll be right here with business fashion tips trying to cheer you on. BusinessFashionTips.com publishes a new podcast on the first Tuesday of every month before 5 a.m. So you have time to download it before you commute to work or while you're getting ready to start your day. The Business Fashion Tips podcast is designed to be informational and motivational, and it's directed towards entrepreneurs, small business owners, and college business management and fashion students. It's meant to inspire, educate, and empower others to take the plunge into business and thrive. I'll be tossing in important points about fashion designers, what they contributed to the business and fashion world, and why they're important. If you think about it, nothing reveals more about a person than their mood, their attitude, and their personality than what they're wearing. So everyone is involved in the fashion business from one aspect or another. From a business standpoint, some of the world's most coveted brands are fashion designers, and I don't know of one business that doesn't want to become a coveted brand. That's what business is all about. Establishing your brand, making yourself known and trusted to the world so they buy your products and become loyal followers. So whether you're into technology, food products, a service, or clothing, our podcast with fashion will pertain to all of these in some way, shape, or form. Fashion designers are visionary brand makers. They're the original thinkers who left an incredible mark on our world, and they all use the same template, which is our body. Can you think of a harder product to design for than that of a moving form like the body? Fashion designers have to create a garment that moves with us. Whether our body's running, sitting, or standing, fashion designers have to deal with it all. What can be harder than a moving template? Although I have to admit, I'm amazed at many products, like flash drives, for instance. Look at how small the technology is getting. These products don't run, walk, or move, or make it difficult to work with, but they sure are incredible. Well, that's it for the podcast. For fun, I made a little 4-question quiz for you to take. It's on our website at either businessfashiontips.com or DeBoraRachelle.com, and each question is worth 3 points. Collect up to 130 points under one email address by December 15th of 2022, and I'll send you a free gift by the end of the year. And feel free also just to take the quizzes just for fun, just to see what you learned from that podcast. If you have any questions you'd like me to answer regarding business or fashion, and if you liked what you heard, subscribe to our newsletter at businessfashiontips.com so we can remind you when the next podcast is aired. Leave a voicemail at the end of the episode notes below, and I'll be happy to answer as many questions as I can. Who knows? It may even be on my next podcast. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week.